Hi there. My name's Tommy Yionoulis, and I am the host of the brand new podcast, Empire Builders, Scaling Success One Location at a Time. This is a podcast dedicated to talking to the founders and the current leadership of those large multi-location brands that you see every single day where you eat and shop at. And we want to find out from these guys, why this business, right? Why of all the things you could do in the world, you chose to do this? We're going to learn what their challenges were at the beginning, what almost broke them. We're going to learn what they're facing today. And as always, we're going to end the show with a wonderful war story. That's one of those stories where you go, I can't believe we got through this. It was insanity, and hopefully they always end with a nice little laugh. So I can't tell you how excited I am to bring you these interviews with these amazing guests and just stoke that entrepreneurial flame that we all have to learn what it took to kind of get where they are today and how they got successful. So thank you for joining us, and I look forward to sharing these wonderful interviews with you. Hey there, everybody. It's Tommy. Welcome to another episode of Empire Builders. I'm super excited to have our guest on today. Please welcome to the show, Marc Millet. Marc, how you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. So, Marc, on Empire Builders, we're here to learn about your company, why you chose this company, what you're doing. But first of all, let's start with question number one, which is please tell us about your company, your company, and how you got here, why you chose to do it, all that kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, so we are, it's Millet Desserts Incorporated. We're a Baskin Robbins franchisee. I've been doing this since 2012 as an owner. My parents actually got into the business in the early 90s, and I worked for them growing up with their one store that they had in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. And went off to college, spent 10 years in law enforcement, got tired of all the politics there and decided I'm not sure what else I was going to do. Parents wanted to grow. They didn't want to do it themselves. So my wife and I cashed out my retirement, left law enforcement, and started with them on buying into our first location with them in 2012. 2013, we added our second one. My parents were still operating their original one at the time, and we've grown. We had those two locations we were operating until 2021 when we got our third location. And then after that, my parents decided they wanted to retire. And so we've been slowly buying them out and also acquiring others since then. And so we've grown from 3 locations in 22 to now 9 locations as of last month. So there's a lot to unpack in that, man. There's a lot of great content. So first of all, you were all in. You said, man, I'm cashing out my retirement. You burned your boats, right? You said, I'm all in. I got to make this work, right? Yep.
Now, did you feel like that is part of the reason why you've been able to grow? Because you were like, there's just no way we're not going to make this happen. Like, we have to make this happen.
Yeah, there was an interesting point when I left my law enforcement job. I did a lot of off-duty and overtime. So when I left that job, I was making a little over $100,000 a year. And when we got into this business, the first year especially, I went from that salary down to about $40,000.
Sure.
And it was a huge adjustment. But, the second year, we had the second store able to add a little bit to it, but you really have to. I worked all the hours. I did a lot of open to closes. I mean, it was a grind for sure. And it's only been in the past few years that I've gotten above where I was at my law enforcement salary, but definitely would never go back to anything else. I'm, franchising, especially being your own boss, it's hard to go work for somebody else now. So
absolutely. And I think with franchising too, I mean, that's the beauty of franchising, right? And I thought it was really interesting as well, because you're the second guy I've interviewed. This is on this podcast where their parents had started it and they're the second generation kind of going into it, right? Yeah. But that's really interesting. And this other guy had a sort of a difference. They had a little bit different. So they own a bunch of Subways, but it's interesting because your parents came in and said, okay, let's go grow together. But they just didn't hand you like a store and say, here you go, here's a job. We built this for you. They were like, no, you need to go out, buy your own store, get your own franchise license, and we'll show you the ropes, right? And what we learned, and we'll work together on it. But they just didn't give you a silver spoon, if you will, and just say, here's 50 stores, go to town, right?
Yeah, no, correct. I mean, we were, my wife and I were half owners with them on that first one. So, we had our skin in the game on that, and we were pure operations. Parents helped with a lot of guidance, setting up entities, insurance, bank accounts. I mean, even though you're a part of a franchise, you are still, a business owner. And so, you have to figure out a lot of that stuff yourself. And they were helpful to navigate some of that with their 20-something year history, just operating their business. So definitely, most people I've talked to in franchising, they fall into it one of two ways, either by pure accident or they grew up around it. So
sure. Well, I think that's the beauty also of the franchise model is like, you have to if you want to be creative, then you shouldn't be a franchisee because that's not the business you're buying into. Nobody wants to hear what the franchisee has to say about different flavors and, hey, we should do this promotion or whatever. Like if you want to be a creative business owner, then you should start something from scratch. But if you want to operate and make money and grow and scale, then franchise 100% is 1,000 times better, easier, and faster than trying to do it on your own. There's only going to be so many Chipotle's where a guy came up with a concept and was able to grow it to 5,000 locations. But I have a lot of clients with our product that have hundreds of units of these chains. $100 million plus company. You know what I mean? Like $250 million plus company. And they did it by just executing the plan and growing. And where the creative part got for them was when they got big enough and they would build the strip center or buy the strip center and then put a couple of stores in the strip center, and they became real estate moguls essentially, So that's kind of like where the beauty of franchising is it's about executing and making money, right? So I think
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I never wanted to create Marc's, ice cream or anything like that. So I'm fine to pay the royalties, because that's essentially what you're doing is you're buying into an already proven business. So
absolutely. And okay, cool. So company business, you and your wife own it. Now you're buying your parents out. They're retiring. You're going to have 9 locations. We kind of already answered my second question is why did you choose this business line? But actually, that's not true. You could have gone into any franchise in the world. I mean, the guys I know in Baskin Robbins have Dunkin' and a bunch of other things. Like, why did you stay with Baskin and Robbins?
Some of it was because, the family was already into it. It was as far as all franchises go, it's a very low cost to get into franchise versus other ones. And we were able to kind of learn the systems already in place, to be able to grow. And if you want to add a new store, it's a lot cheaper than, like your McDonald's or other brands might be. So, and we have plans to try and go into other brands within Inspire Brands, who owns Baskin Robbins. So we're looking to eventually branch into Jimmy John's, Buffalo Wild Wings, a few other things. But right now our focus is just growing the Baskin network. So.
Yeah, and totally. And also too, like, let's be honest, it's a lot easier to manage a Baskin Robbins than it is a Jimmy John's because you don't have the same perishability. As long as your freezer's on, you're good, right? Like you're going to ice cream, you're not going to get freezer burn. Like, you have enough volume. Whereas now all of a sudden you throw in rotten tomatoes and avocado and lettuce and all that other stuff, and it's just X amount more headaches. And everything gets up by that. You have to have a better manager, right? You have to do better inventory. You do all these different things better and just more complicated, right? Whereas like you have a nice, simple, your business is such a nice, simple model. As long as you have at least 1 gallon or 1 container or 5-gallon container of Baskin Robbins in the freezer for each line item, you're good, right? You can get through the next couple of days and you're golden, right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the inventory stuff for us, I mean, you have your ice cream products and you have your dry good products. We get our deliveries once a week on each of those. We have our regular staff that man the counter, and then you have your cake business. But for the most part, it's probably, as far as franchises go, it's the easiest in the food industry to manage on a daily basis. So
that's great. Yeah, if I was dreaming of being in your position, I'd be like, I just want 500 of these damn things, and I'll make so much money. Yeah. So I do have a question. So now you have 9 stores, right? Obviously, when you had 1 store, you were there every day. You saw what's happening. Then you went to 2 stores. Okay, can't be in both stores every day, but maybe me and my wife can kind of split it up, or I'll drive over to one or the other. But now you're at 9 stores, right? So it's what has that transition in the business been like for you? Like now it's more about HR and accounting and right? And is that correct? Like
it's
organization.
It's very different. So like you say, you 1, you 2, it's kind of like having kids, right? When you have 1 or 2 and then you get to 3, you're like, how do I manage this? They're outnumbering me. And it's kind of a similar thing. So our biggest pain point so far, I think, was when we got to between stores 4 and 5, because you need managers, but to be able to afford those managers in this current landscape of employing people, it's tough to be able to afford them. And so then you say, okay, if I need a manager to handle all this, well, now you're getting into, okay, are they full-time, part-time? Are they salary? If they're salary, there's requirements on their pay. You have to start offering benefits. Well, where do I get those benefits from? I have to offer a 401k. How do I set that up? There's all these different things that you just don't think about. Or like our most recent pain point was collecting cash. So each store had a regular safe in it, but okay, so I have to get that money to the bank. Well, it's not as simple as just collecting it. You have to audit it and everything. But even just the simple process of collecting money was like a half a day. And in the wintertime, you need your cash every day, of course, just like any other time, but half a day every day. And now other things are not getting attended to. And so then you have these pain points of, okay, how do I solve this problem? Sure. And a lot of times it just comes down to cost, right? So to solve the money issue, we found we hooked up with Loomis, who has these smart safes that we put in our stores. And so the crew each night deposit the cash, it counts it, audits it, makes sure that it's not fraudulent or whatever. And then we get a provisional credit in our bank account the next day. Loomis comes once a week. They collect the cash. You can do change service on there. But of course, their fee for one of those safes is, $400 or $500 a month. And so if you only have, 2 or 3 stores, it may not make sense. But once you get over a certain threshold, I mean, we went to them this year and we said, hey, we got 9 locations. They said, great, we can lower you down to, half of that price because we're doing more of them. And also they work with Inspire Brands, so we get an additional discount for that. So you never know. Sometimes, you might have an idea for that system and it may not work at that moment, but it may be something you need, a year or 2 down the road. So we're always looking for anything that's tech forward, anything that simplifies it, creates less paperwork. We're always looking for those kind of things. So
absolutely. That's really interesting. My buddy, I think those smart safes, one of my friends was the CFO and one of the owners of that company.
Okay. And I saw them in 2017, I believe it was. We were at a world convention for Baskin Robbins, and they had a booth out there. Yeah. And I looked at it, and I got the pricing. I'm like, man, this is it's too much right now, but someday. And so I just kept the flyer, and we implemented it this year, and it's been a huge cost savings because I've got one of my locations is 2 hours from where I live, and trying to go there every day to get cash, I mean, you just can't do it.
No, that's crazy. That's actually like such a cool, interesting thing. That's really cool, like use of that. And like you said, it is like kids, and it's like, there are certain inflection points within the business, and it's like you just have to grind it out with the less efficient way for some period of time. And then eventually you get to a point where like, okay, now, like you said, it makes sense. Like I put in the brutal part of this, but now I've crossed that line and I can afford this cost now. Right. And,
one of our other issues too is delegation, right? I had a hard time with that because when you're the business owner, you have your 1 shop, 2 shop. I mean, you're it, right? You're wearing a bunch of hats. You're financially invested. This is your baby, right? And so to delegate out tasks or whatever to other people, it's hard to do. And I think that's where a lot of franchisees get stuck with one or two shops at the most, is they really struggle with that delegation. And a lot of the stuff, you know, I heard on a podcast one time, he said, there are people that are way smarter than me in a lot of other areas. And instead of being upset by that, I'm going to find those people or those jobs in my business that I hate doing. And I'm going to find somebody to do those that are better at it than me. And then once I delegate that out, you'll be surprised. You'll never think of it again.
Yep.
And it's funny because the more I've delegated out to other people, a lot of times they do a way better job with it than I do. And I don't think about it ever again, which is really weird.
And it's interesting too, because as you grow the business, every store adds a little bit more complexity. But as you build in all the systems to manage all these little issues, once those systems are in place, you can, they just run. Like that delegation is just giving someone a system, right? Hey, exactly. Go do this, go do that. But like once you start, like you have these growing pain points as you continue your growth. But eventually you'll get to a point where 9 stores and 100 stores are going to be managed the exact same way, right? Like you'll have the infrastructure, you know how to hire the people, you know how to train them, you know how to onboard them, get them all their technology. It'll just be like, it'll just be easy to do. But when you're building it from scratch, you have to address each one of these things as they come up, right every time. And that ends up, and then, it might take a month or two to figure out the solution to it. And then you got to get it implemented and train people and hope that you do a good job. And there's so many like little pitfalls in there, right? But then all of a sudden, once you get over the hump, like you said, then you don't even have to think about it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even now I look back, and when we had our first couple of stores, you've got yourself and maybe, 10, 15 employees, 9 locations. I have just under 200 employees. Most of them are cycling out every 6 months, trying to, and there's people that are still wanting to keep track of like their onboarding paperwork, doing it all by pen and paper. I'm like, you can't do it. And there's no way. So you have to find those solutions. We use ADP now. Early on, we used a company called Homebase, which is a little bit more cost effective, but those scheduling and onboarding and all those tasks that you can put onto the employee to finish, and it takes it off your plate. So, and those are huge savings in the long run.
And I'm all for outsourcing and partnering with people. Yes, it costs more money. It's always going to cost more money than it would be to do it yourself. But the simplicity of having the system, I think, outweighs. Like when you do it yourself, you're working in your business. But when you outsource it, you pay a little bit more money. And honestly, it's not that much more, because you have to. People always go, "Well, I can do it myself." Well, you're paying someone to do that job, or you're not doing something else that's more important. So you have to factor in that opportunity cost, right? Or the physical cost of that human being that's doing it. So you're basically paying what you would pay a salaried employee plus a profit margin to the other guy, right? Because they're going to make their profit. But then the simplicity and the freeing up your brain part of things is also got a value to that as well, right? And it's worth it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's 2 things I always tell people if you're going to get into franchising, right? So do you want to work in your business, or do you want to work on your business, right? So if you're in that 1-2 shop situation, essentially most franchises, you've bought yourself a job, right? Yeah. And that's fine. Some people are totally fine with that. I didn't want to buy myself a job. I wanted to build something not only for myself, but for my kids someday. And you have those points where you go, okay, I'm going to get to, between store 3 and 5, I'm not going to make much money on those locations because I have to pay some of that to managers or systems or companies, or like this Loomis Safe thing or whatever it is. So I'm going to take a little less. However, now those systems are in place, and the more stores I add on, the cheaper that is. And it's a plug and play system, right? So now when we go to stores 10, 11, 15, whatever it is, second we do an acquisition, which is mainly what we do now, I can say, okay, right off the bat, I need this system, this system, this system. And it's, by the time we've got it down now, where from start to finish, I can do an acquisition in less than 6 months.
Wow.
And it's super quick and easy. And even the operations, I mean, this last acquisition we did, I was there for the signing of the paperwork at the closing, and then my management team took over. So, you know, and all those systems were already kind of in place, but we have, you know, a cleaning company that comes once a month to the stores. We have window cleaners that come every week or 2 weeks. We have, you know, HVAC company that comes and does all of our preventative maintenance. We have, you know, all these things, this Rolodex of people. You know, even now, it doesn't even seem like much, but take a lock on a door, right? Most of the time you have keys, right? So you give a key out to all these employees, but then as employees leave, they don't give them back. They break it off in the door. They switch shifts with somebody, and now that person doesn't have a key to open the store with. It's a lot of headaches. So what we did, made a simple change to a keypad door lock, right? Initial cost, about $1,500, but now I don't have to worry about keys. And anybody can get in. Even if our service technicians come in early in the morning, they can still get in. If we have a problem employee that leaves, I can change the codes. It's super simple. But just even those little changes like that take time out of your day. I mean, that's, you really just need to look at that as, yes, I'm spending money on that today, but how much is that going to save me in time and drama in the long run? So,
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, because we've kind of like, you've answered what you're Well, you've answered a lot of the questions, but I want to let's talk about acquisitions. So you're not looking to open new stores. Are you looking to buy stores? Is that because, well, tell me why you're choosing that, because that's interesting.
So right now, Baskin Robbins is in a little bit of a transition, right? So we have remodels that are due every 10 years. Generally in the past, those remodels we're going to put some laminate on the front of the dip cabinets. We're going to change out the wallpaper, maybe a few small things, talking maybe $30,000.
Sure.
The newest one is we've rebranded, right? So we have new building signage that needs to go up. We have completely new dip cabinets, the new floors, you name it. Everything is completely different. So your average remodel is around $150,000. And an average new build is around $400,000.
Sure.
You know, so when you look at some of these older franchisees in the system and they're saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to pay $100,000 and some odd $1,000 potentially. Am I going to recoup that investment? Do I really want to do this that long? And a lot of them are saying, you know what? I'm within about 5 years of the remodel. I'm going to start thinking about selling it. And so, you know, 9 times out of 10, at least in Colorado, the stores that come up like that, they've been in their markets for 30, 40, 50 years. Really good track record, really good, you know, clientele of customer base. And so we just go in and say, look, here's the situation. Here's what, you know, how much time until the remodel, how much term you have left with Baskin Robbins, how much time is left on your lease, whatever. We factor all that in, and then we offer them, you know, generally I try to price about 45 cents on the dollar for sales to get a good range of how much that store is valued at.
Sure.
And then we just go in and work a deal out with the owner. And we've done a couple of owner carry loans recently, which seems to work out well for the sellers because they don't get that big tax hit right at the front. They get those standard monthly payments, you know, so it's been a good thing for them in the long run, but, you know, and in trade off, we're getting a good location and we put our systems in place and away we go. So I remember one of the big Dunkin' franchisees out at a convention, he's got over 100 stores in New Jersey. And he said the way he usually does it is for every 4 acquisitions, he'll do a new build.
Sure.
And so that's kind of I kind of took a little bit of that of, you know, that way if you do a new build and then you have all this huge investment and the sales aren't good out of the gate, it's not going to hurt you as bad. So,
sure.
So that's kind of the route we're taking. But there's just a lot of acquisitions right now, so we're really focused on that. So I've got 3 more slated for Q1 of next year, and just kind of working out some of the details on those now and see if we can put those deals together. So
That's great. And it's very interesting because franchising really took off in like the early, like 70s, 80s. It's really when it kind of like got some legs.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of guys out there that are, like you said, they're in their 60s. They're just like, okay, I need a way out of this. And not everyone's kids want to run restaurants. You know what I mean? So I could see a lot of opportunity to get out there and pick up some great stores. And then you also want to have some of those new build stores, and you want to get them in theory, I would suggest probably in some high profile areas to help build the brand, because knowing that you have all your other ancillary stores over. So it's okay to put one on the Boulder Mall and spend a little bit more potentially if they would let you or whatever, just to get the exposure to back to people. Hey, this is Baskin Robbins,
Yeah. In any of the new builds, we always try and look for centers where we can potentially do a drive-through. Those are always more valuable than not, but it's tough. A lot of the new centers, the rents are just insane right now. It's crazy,
and it's like they're just driving turnover with those rents, because you can't. I worked at Quiznos in like 2008, 2009, and that was what was killing us, is the real estate market bubble coincided with adding 5,000 stores, and everybody was paying rent, and then when sales went down, you're sitting on a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month nut.
Yep.
You can't even make your rent.
Yeah. And you're going to see a lot of that traditionally for us, we want to try and have our rents between about, $3,000 and $4,000 a month all in with your triple nets. Anything a little higher than that, you can do it, but it's tough. But you're seeing right now, and I saw a news story not too long ago about the new crumble cookies. There's a lot of those stores, and the reason why they're having trouble is because their sales are starting to go down, but they took on, $12,000, $15,000 a month rents. And when they were doing the high numbers, that was great, but where's it going to settle out? And, and you signed a 10-year lease agreement, that's going to be hard to pay. So.
Well, and it's interesting too, because we have a Baskin Robbins very close to our house in Highlands Ranch. And so my daughter loves it. So we go there quite a bit. And you can still get an ice cream cone for maybe $2.50, like a single scoop ice cream cone. Does that seem reasonable, right? Like in that price range?
Yeah, I think for our stores, we've increased our single scoop now to, I think it's just over $4. But it's, it's still reasonably priced. I mean, we try to keep within the market range. It's just, everything's going up. This year, we've been dealing with the landlords got hit pretty hard with their tax bills. And so they spread that out amongst the tenants. And so we've been dealing with catching up on those higher costs. So.
But I guess totally. It's crazy expensive here right now. We got hit by that Highlands Ranch tornado last year, and our insurance, our property taxes went up, and then our insurance went insane. So it's like it's insane. I can send a kid to college for the extra cost it's going to be just to live in my stupid house. But those crumble cookies aren't cheap, man. You know what I mean? You got to get a box of 4. It's like $20 for 4 cookies. Like, it's a lot of money,
Well, they're very large too. I don't know very many people that can finish off, one of them in one sitting. And so, then it sits there. And I know my wife and daughter are real big on those, and they comment how a lot of their popular flavors, they don't come around as often as they used to. And so each week when they show what's available nearby us, it's not really a flavor that they're wanting to have. So
sure.
So it's I don't know. I think there'll be a reset, and of course there's a lot of competition coming in with the cookie market and everything. So we saw that too with the frozen yogurt. That was big, about 5-6 years ago, and they picked off a lot of our business for a minute, and then they've gone away now. So it kind of recycles.
Every 10 years, frozen yogurt makes a huge play in franchising, and then it goes away just as quick as it can.
Yeah.
There was one in every strip center around here, and now there's like one in the area that made it.
Yeah, TCBY, Menchie's. Yeah, and that was some of the nice part with my parents is they would kind of let us, hey, this is nothing new. This happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it is. comes around and then it leaves, and so able to keep us from freaking out too much. So
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's cyclical, right?
Yep.
Well, so you mentioned some of the big. So I guess what are some of the big challenges you're facing right now? Let's just recap that. We'll hit that question and then we hit the war story.
Biggest of any is financing, right? So there's tons of franchises out there. There's tons of franchise businesses out there, but you'd be surprised how many of the banks don't understand franchising. And so going to your local, First Bank or whatever credit union, it's very hard for them to understand your business enough to give you a loan, especially if you have a new entity or whatever it might be. And so we've learned over the years that finding those specialized banks, and a lot of them are on the East Coast. So we work well with Centium Capital, Harbor Capital, JRG. There's been a few that we've worked with that have done really well for us, and they understand the franchising space. But getting those relationships built, or even just finding those institutions, it's harder than you think.
Sure.
Staffing, of course, would be number two. You'd be surprised how many big name brands of franchises are still, hey, I need to hire. I'm going to put a sign on the door and have a paper application on the counter. Well, the generation of kids now, they've had a cell phone in their hand since they came out of the womb, and they just don't fill out paper applications. So you have to find solutions, usually digitally, QR codes, or we get a lot of luck with Indeed, ZipRecruiter, some of those sites to get applications. And then I would say the third one is just inflation. Ever since COVID, we've had this ripple effect of inflation. And first it was on equipment and construction costs and that kind of stuff. But now it's stemmed over into our product costs. We've had so many of our products that we purchase go up, 30, 40, 50, 60% in a very short amount of time. And, you have to raise your menu prices regardless, but you don't want to raise them too much where you price yourself out of the market. And so it's a struggle. And so we want to try and offer, we have daily specials. We work with Valpak to offer ads, that kind of stuff for discounts. But it just seems to be a constant kind of struggle to find a good price point so that we still make money, but also we're not charging $10 for a scoop of ice cream. So we got a lot of franchisees in California that are struggling with that now that they've raised the minimum wage to $20 an hour. So it's a tough one.
Let me ask you this question. How much local store marketing are you guys doing, and what are you doing?
Oddly enough, so we've tried Facebook, Instagram ads. We've tried, the money mailers, all that stuff. The best luck that we've had, and this is my sister actually kind of got me onto it, is with Valpak, right? So that's that envelope that comes to everybody's mailboxes. You got to sift through 20, 30 things to find your actual coupon. You wouldn't think that today's society would be, they'd be more tech focused, not on paper, but we actually get a lot of return on those Valpaks. So
themselves?
Say again, I'm sorry.
They pay for themselves? Like, do you make enough?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. So to put in perspective, right now we're about, we advertise right now from March through October each year. And so it averages about $400 per store. Some of that's because we have so many stores. If you were a one shop person, you'd probably spend around $600 or $700 per location. So again, the more you have, the cheaper it gets. But we've gotten some really good return on those, and by far the best coupon is the buy one get one. So
that makes sense. Okay, so we're coming up to the end here. The war story time. What I'm looking for is just one of those cringeworthy stories of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we got through it. I worked 68 hours, or we did this festival and you scooped 12,000 scoops, like those kinds of stories.
Geez. This last winter was probably our most cringeworthy. We had the perfect storm of the inflation hit us. We didn't have pricing fixed early enough to combat it. Here in Colorado, as you know, last year we had a very wet and cold spring and summer. Seemed like every storm was coming in on the weekends, and consequently, we just got really behind on a lot of our bills. With vendors, with all kinds of stuff, and it was just, we were at that pain point of, okay, how do we get through this? So we had to do some loans we weren't happy with. We had to do some taking high interest stuff that we didn't really like, and we were able to get through that. We were able to now pay all those terrible loan people off, and we're in a good place now. But it was definitely a couple of moments in the winter where you're like, okay, should I go get an application at Target, or like, what's the plan here? So, but we just put our heads down, just grinded it out, do the best you can, and find areas where you can cut costs. And at the end of the day, I always tell people, if you're going to get into franchising or any business, really, you have to treat it like your child, right? So you would do anything for your children. And if you're unwilling to make those sacrifices or sell that, prized Harley Davidson in the garage, don't do it, because you're going to have those times where, times are tough, it's lean, and you got to make payroll, or you got to make rent, or whatever it is. And, your crew should never know the problems that are happening internally. And that's part of your job as being the boss. So yeah, it was definitely, we dug ourselves out of a very large hole this winter. And again, weather's better now, things are good, and that's how fast the tide can change. But yeah, that would probably be my most cringeworthy, I would say, as far as business goes. So,
and we've all been there. There have been times where we didn't make a salary for a long time because we had to put every penny back into paying somebody else a salary, or paying for services, or whatever we needed to get this business going. So I've been there for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Marc, thank you so much for taking the time today to be on the Empire Builders podcast. I wish you the best of luck. I hope we talk again in a couple of years and you're at 50 stores and you're driving a Ferrari or something cool.
Sounds good to me.
And thank you guys for listening to the show. And we really just thank you so much for your patronage. And we'll talk to you guys soon with a new episode. Take care.